the government will be ready to receive bonds from investors interested in investing in construction of the crude oil pipeline under the LAPSSET project in 5 months. The pipeline set to run between Port of Lamu, Turkana, Uganda and South Sudan oil basins is said to be in its final stages. And as KTN's Charles Gitonga reports, the LAPSSET Development Authority is now calling on the private sector players to begin warming up to the idea of taking up investment opportunities in the project.
The government is kicking off the Lamu Port South Sudan Ethiopia project with construction of the port, road and pipeline. This is expected to provide an operating platform for private investors who will develop other components like airports, rail, industrial parks and resource cities. The construction of the crude oil pipeline connecting oil basins to Lamu Port now seems to be around the corner, and the government is inviting local investors.
We know that the crude oil pipeline is a high profit investment. What we are doing as a government is to make sure that we involve private sector.
The LAPSSET Authority has also lined up other opportunities for investors, urging them to partner so as to match up competition from international firms. The project, the authority says, has enough opportunities, especially in their company developments like agricultural value chains, resort cities and industrial parks.
Resort cities are ideally for private sector investment, in which government is only putting in place the requisite basic infrastructure, and we are allowing private sector to come on board.
The investors, however, expressed fear that their involvement in such massive projects appears limited, since the law guarantees them 40% of the cake is not specific. But the LAPSSET Authority says it is involving private investors from the initial stages of the projects to ensure no interests are sidelined.
At the same time, we are modeling private sector participation in our documentation, in our project documentation, and in our project implementation policy.
So far, the construction of the 500 kilometers of road network along the LAPSSET corridor in Kenya and Ethiopia is ongoing and at an advanced stage of development. Charles Gitonga, KTN.
Moving on, fresh from posting 1.3 billion shillings in half-year profit, investor firm Centum is training its eyes on the lucrative beer market for growth. Centum already has investments in a wide array of sectors, ranging from real estate, financial services, energy, and non-alcoholic beverages. But the move to invest in a brewing plant could be a major coup for the company. I sat down with the CEO James Mworia, and he had this to say.
The intention is to get into that area, and also target the lower income segment with products that are affordable. We see significant potential in that line of business, but also the vertical integration that exists with with producers of raw materials like sorghum and other products. So our target is that within the next 2 to 3 years, we should be able to be in a position where we are able to do local production, not just distribution of the product manufactured from overseas. That's an interesting question. If you step back 10, 12 years ago, and you look at the banking sector then, and you look at the big players, what we considered big players then, one would have argued this was a mature market. Why is there room for indigenous players? Fast forwarding today, the story is different. The top 3 banks in Kenya are indigenous banks, and that analogy can be said for very many sectors. If you look at the consumption of beer per person, the per capita consumption of beer per person in Kenya, it is very low compared to even the GDP per capita and compared to other countries. So the future is a lot brighter, and really the point is that a lot of what is consumed, alcoholic products that are consumed, they are products that are outside the radar of the formal sector. These are informal brews, which are really a hazard to the health of the consumers. So we are confident. We believe there's a room for more players, and we are going to play our role and work to the extent that we can with the existing players. The ease of doing business is going to increase significantly, and so the prospects for the country are great. Now, Centum is a microcosm of the potential of East Africa. Over the last 5.5 years, we've grown our asset base 5 times without having to go to the market to raise capital. So I'm expecting a hockey stick sort of graph. And as East Africa takes off, Centum is going to take off. Our target is by 2019, we should have at least 720 billion shillings of assets under management. Today we are at 175. 5 years ago it was only 6 billion shillings. In fact, when I stood up and told investors that our target is to be a 30 billion company by 2013, many were very doubtful and skeptical. By 2014, we were at 140 billion shillings. The last 6 months, we are at 170 billion shillings. So the prospects for Centum are bright, the prospects for the shareholders of Centum are bright.